Hi there, and welcome to this week's vlog. I was on my treadmill, hope you're impressed, earlier in the week and listening to UCB, United Christian Broadcasters, on the radio. And the chap who was speaking was really talking about the fact that many people can be divided, or people in general can be divided into those who naturally are grumblers and those who naturally are praisers. In other words, we moan and grumble about things, or we praise things that we enjoy and are good, or in people or in life. There's actually a radio program on BBC Radio Sheffield. I've not actually listened to it, but I know people who do, called Praise or Grumble. I think it's a sports program. So after the Saturday afternoon matches, you can ring in to this radio program, and you can either grumble about how rubbish your team were or praise them for how well they played. So praise or grumble. So there's the question: are you a praiser or a grumbler? Quite a few years ago now, I heard a story about someone. I think he was actually a bishop, but I may have got that wrong. But he was attending a particular conference, and he'd taken his dog with him to this conference. And every morning before the conference started, he would take the dog for a walk around this local park. And the weather was a bit miserable. And every morning, he said, he would meet this same gentleman who was also walking in the park. And every morning he stopped to talk, and the man would be nothing but grumbling, moaning about the weather. Oh, it's so horrible, it's so dull, it's so rainy. And so I think 2 or 3 mornings consecutively, he met this man who would do nothing but grumble and moan. The next morning, however, the sun was shining, it warmed up, it was a lovely day, the sky was blue, and the bishop thought, well, it's got nothing to grumble about today. So anyway, he got to this chap, and they stopped, and the chap said, well, we've had some terrible weather in past days, haven't we? So he was, it seems, a natural grumbler. And thinking about that, I was reminded of the story of the Exodus in the Bible, the book of Exodus, how Moses, called by God, and leads the people of Israel out of slavery, and they head to the promised land. And it's a remarkable story of deliverance, God's promise, God's hand upon them. But the people of Israel weren't satisfied in the desert. They didn't like it. And we're told in Exodus chapter 16, the whole Israelite community grumbled to Moses and Aaron in the desert. And in fact, they were so fed up that they said it would be better if we never left Egypt. They'd forgotten the desperate situation they'd been in. So it's just tough sometimes being a leader when people grumble. And certainly Moses and Aaron, his brother, who was with him in leadership, they were grumbled again by the whole community. Imagine how tough that must have been for them. They were doing God's will, and yet the people were just grumbling. Compare that with what St. Paul writes to the Thessalonian church, 1 Thessalonians 5:11. He says this: we should be doing this, encourage one another and build each other up. All grumbling does is, it doesn't solve any problems, does it? It just brings people down. It discourages people. Whereas if we praise, say, yeah, I really appreciated that. Into my mind just popped a story about a vicar I once knew, a colleague in the same village where I lived. And I was talking to him one day, and he said, wow, a surprising thing happened to me this week. Monday morning, someone knocked on the vicarage door. I opened it, wondering what's going to happen, and there was a lady who was a member of my congregation. And I thought to myself, what is she going to complain about? But actually she said, Vicar, I really enjoyed your sermon on Sunday. Thank you very much. And my friend said, I nearly fell over backwards. Somebody giving praise rather than grumbling. That was fantastic. So there's the challenge for us. So in our relationships with people, do we always look for the things we don't like, the things that upset us, and grumble about them, either to someone directly, or even worse, perhaps in some ways, behind people's backs? Do we sow seeds of dissent by grumbling about something or about situations? Grumbling itself can never sort out a problem. It's just not worth doing. We can share concerns, of course, in the right way, but not to bring people down. Far better to encourage, to look for the good in something or in someone, even those we don't get on with, we don't like. We can, if we try, we can find something good in them and praise them. Like a parent with a child. If a parent's constantly berating them and criticizing, grumbling about their performance, that's going to have a devastating effect on that child. But if we seek to encourage, to support, to praise, then again, that will have a positive effect on that child. And you can say the same thing about what about our relationship with God? Are we constantly grumbling to God when He doesn't do things we want Him to do? When things happen that we don't like, why has God allowed that to happen? Do we grumble at Him all the time, or do we praise God? And I've heard many people say that even in the midst of dark situations, when they still can praise God, it really somehow does something positive within them, lifts their spirits. Psalm 34 verse 1 says, excuse me, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be on my lips. If we can find the will, even in the toughest of times, and we don't know what's going on, we don't feel God close, if we can still praise God and lift up our hearts to Him, then that's going to have a powerful effect. So there we are. Are you a praiser or are you a grumbler? Maybe most of us are a bit of both, but my prayer for myself is that I may become more and more of a praiser and not a grumbler. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening today.